Well, good morning. I would now like to call to order the August 11th, 2026 meeting of the Indiana State Board of Education. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bess,
Present.
Ms. DeLosa,
Present.
Mr. Durham,
Present.
Dr. Ernest,
Here.
Ms. Hamill, Mr. Gastineau,
Here.
Mr. Mapes,
Here.
Dr. Jenner,
Here.
Ms. Moat,
Here.
Ms. Rentschler, Mr. Watts.
Here.
Thank you, Dr. Jenner.
Thank you. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
With a motion and a second, any discussion? Any recusals?
I will be recusing on item G, school technology advanced approvals.
Okay, thank you. All right, with a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Iris was trying to say something. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Erica.
I was saying Iris was trying to say something, but I don't think her mic is working.
Yeah,
She was trying to recuse.
Iris, your mouth is moving, but your mic is not working. If you want to type that in the chat there, we'll pick that up in our notes. As a reminder, when you have a large consent agenda, any recusals have to occur if it's related to a school. So as an example, BJ with Evansville, he would have to recuse, and Iris will type hers in the chat. So just let us know. Thank you, Iris. Got it. Any others? We had a motion and a second, and I believe we already approved, but let's go ahead and do that again with a motion and a second with the recusals as noted. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the May 13th, 2026 meeting?
So moved. Second.
The motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I feel like I'm I feel like I'm at a middle school lunch table because all the boys are over here and all of our women are online. Those of you who worked in middle schools, I certainly did. Loved my time there. You get that. But glad those of you could join us online as well. We are back to another school year. Hard to believe, but also what an exciting time of the year it is. Per usual, I love scrolling through all the social media, seeing the first day of school pictures for both kids and parents and teachers. So I think on behalf of the Board of Education, the Department of Education, we just want to extend an enormous thank you to all of the individuals who choose to serve in our schools. Serving in our schools is serving a cause much bigger than yourself. It's serving not only your local community in our state, but most importantly, our number one asset, which is our young children. So enormous thank you to our teachers, our school and district administrators, our school counselors, bus drivers, school nutrition professionals, and so many more. Thank you, thank you. We have a lot to dig into today, so just a few highlights. First one, we had the opportunity, and Pat, this probably started back when you were superintendent, I imagine. We had the opportunity to celebrate Perry Township Schools and the UIndy partnership. That was incredibly exciting. A new entrepreneurship and innovation program that will immerse high school students in real world learning. There's going to be a facility right on UIndy's campus that Perry Central or Perry Township students will be able to go and get everything from college credit, credentials, work-based learning. But it's a partnership with K-12 higher education, business and industry, and philanthropy, which again, we are just seeing more and more of in the state of Indiana across different communities. But again, yet another example. While on the campus, while on UIndy's campus, students will, as I mentioned, experience careers firsthand, develop in-demand skills, and engage directly with local businesses to help them brainstorm and find solutions to real-time current challenges. I think that was my favorite part. If you've ever seen high school students do this, I've had the opportunity several times when a business and industry leader comes in and essentially it's a pitch. They say, here's our problem with our business and industry situation, and the high school students work to solve it. And they usually, have a month or so and then come back and pitch and present to the business and industry leader. And then they get to choose which solution they feel like is the best. I don't know if the person they choose is the only one to get the A. That's a lot of pressure. But it is really, really special to see. So this partnership is going to have a lot of that. Pat, anything else you'd want to add on that one?
I think, congratulations to Dr. Spray, but Jane Pollard and Jeff Spencer has really worked hard for several years, even while I was there, to try to have a stronger partnership with UIndy because they're right there in their backyard. So to see this finally to come to fruition that we're actually going to get students in a high poverty area on campus doing college work, congratulations to them, and I look forward to visiting it once they get it up and running.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you shouted out those three individuals. There are always change agents behind any initiative like that, and all three of those individuals really help make that happen. Next big shout out I'd like to provide is the Next Generation Hoosier Educators Scholarship. They were officially announced. That's a major investment to help more aspiring teachers pay for college. CHE recently awarded the scholarship to more than 300 Indiana students and ultimately future teachers. The renewable scholarship of up to $10,000 each year or $40,000 in total will be awarded to the student as they progress through their education preparation program. So really excited for those individuals who are joining our profession. The recipients do commit to teach for 5 years at an eligible Indiana school. And the application poll was quite remarkable. We had students from 323 Indiana high schools apply, representing nearly every Indiana county. So representing about 90 of our 92 counties. I think that's those are definitely some data points we'll mention during session because, of course, that's a legislative line that we have in our state budget. And we want the General Assembly to know what an impact that is making. Next big shout out, summer learning labs. With the start of school, we had a lot of summer learning occur. Summer learning labs, if you all recall, started right here in Indianapolis several years ago. We saw excellent return on investment for students, really saw the needle move in ELA and math. That caused us to wonder, would this also work in rural Indiana? What about other parts of our state? It is a free 5-week learning and enrichment opportunity for students, again, who need that specific support in reading and math. They do have, I should say, they do have some fun as well. In addition to the fun they have with reading and math, they also have fun with various activities and enrichments in the afternoon, whether it's field trips or other experiences. We had nearly 12,000 students receive additional academic support through this program at no cost to their families. And it was offered at 117 free sites all across Indiana. 4 anchor partners, want to shout them out: Boys and Girls Club of the Northern Indiana Corridor, the Mind Trust, Creating Avenues for Student Transformation, or CAST, and Wabash County YMCA. Huge shout out to all of you for making that happen. And also more than 700 licensed teachers and instructional assistants who offered high quality in-person instruction to our students. Major thank you there. And I know State Board, as usual, once we have that data, we'll make sure and do a presentation on the return on investment, what we're learning from the impact of that. Today's presentation will focus on 2026 assessment data. We are very, very appreciative of all of the media here with the cameras and also those in print. We have good news to share. And I think anything that you can do to help us celebrate the good news with reading, that is why Indiana is moving. So just want to thank you all very much for taking time to be here. On that note, I'll now invite, well, actually, there are a couple more things before I get to the good news. I was about to jump over some things. We will hear eventually from Paul Ketchum, Assistant Secretary of Education, Anna Schultz, our Chief Academic Officer, on some of this assessment data. We have some special guests here from schools that we will have share their story and how they made such incredible strides. I'll pause there and ask if there are any board member comments and reports. Yes, Dr. Ernest.
So it was exciting on whatever day it was, the opening day of the fair on the 7th. The Indiana Pork does their ham breakfast where they have all the legislators, the governors there. It was really great to have Governor Braun touting work-based learning and recognizing a big group of work-based learning students that Indiana Pork with their work has really made those connections with schools. And that's exciting to see agriculture stepping up. And I'm excited that Roseacre Farms, which is one of the largest poultry producers in our state, egg producer, they have signed on to want to do the same thing and begin to make those partnerships with schools. So you all know I'm kind of biased toward agriculture, but agriculture is stepping up to provide a lot of those work-based learning opportunities. So that was exciting for him to really be recognizing that with the work that we set up with diplomas and so forth. So
Thank you very much for flagging that, Dr. Ernest. Any other board comments or reports? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to public comment. We have one today. I'll invite Tom Bailey to come up. Good
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Tom Bailey. In the interest of time, I think I only get 3 minutes. I'm going to jump right into this, okay?
Yes, sir.
In 1864, Lincoln was up for re-election, and there was talk of returning Black soldiers to slavery. And Lincoln, in his response to that, he wrote a letter to Charles Robinson on August 17th, 1864, in his response to that. He says, the party who could elect a president on a war and slavery restoration platform would of necessity lose the colored force. And that force being lost would be as powerless to save the Union as to do any other impossible thing. It is not a question of sentiment or taste, but one of physical force, which may be measured and estimated as horsepower, and steam power are measured and estimated. And by measurement, it is more than we can lose and live, nor can we, by discarding it, get a white force in place of it. To John T. Mills, Lincoln said, my enemies pretend I am now carrying on this war for the sole purpose of abolition. So long as I am president, it shall be carried on for the sole purpose of restoring the Union. But no human power can subdue this rebellion without the use of the emancipation policy. The slightest knowledge of arithmetic will prove to any man that the rebel armies cannot be destroyed by democratic strategy. It would sacrifice all the white men of the North to do it. Abandon all posts now garrisoned by Black men, take 200,000 men from our side and put them in the battlefield or cornfield against us, and we would be compelled to abandon the war in 3 weeks. I provided all of you a copy of, in his own words, Lincoln's letters reveal that Black soldiers won the Civil War, with a copy of a certified letter sent to this board back in January. You can pass these around. These are yours, if you like. Okay.
Yeah, we'll pass those around. Go
Later,
ahead, David.
if you like,
Thank you.
okay? And just highlighting Indiana codes and academic standards. This is interesting. Mr. Mapes, I heard you say earlier to one of your colleagues that truth is truth. Very good. These excerpts that I've just read only scratch the surface of what Lincoln wrote about these Black soldiers. Yet none of these letters from the Library of Congress are in Indiana school books. The Emancipation Proclamation was a quid pro quo that Lincoln used to build the Black army that he needed to save the Union. And he said so. Without these ex-slaves, there would be no United States. They saved the very country who enslaved them, and as payment, their dominant impact on the war was omitted from academic history. But this is not about Black history. This is about the exclusion of primary source presidential material. Lincoln's presidential letters cannot be banned as they are afforded the same protection as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. So how is it that Lincoln's primary strategy for victory is omitted from Indiana school curriculum when it is Indiana's own academic standards and codes that require it to be taught? How are Hoosiers to interpret that? This board can have as its legacy the honor of being the first board of education in the country to compel Civil War history to comprehensively be taught from Abraham Lincoln's perspective. You have the opportunity of being the first to get out in front of unstoppable, unbannable Civil War facts that will soon permeate all Civil War curriculums. This is never going away. Is that buzzer for me, sir? Oh, okay. Please do not ignore what can be viewed as a reasonable, logical, and lawful academic request. After the meeting, I do have I have 10 free books I bought with me for anyone that would like a copy of the book.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for the additional time you gave me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right. The next thing we have on our meeting is a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
With a motion and a second, any discussion? Seeing none. Oh, Iris, go ahead. Your mic doesn't work, but your hand raise works. I saw it. With a motion and a second, final call, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, and now we will shift to new business. And I'll invite Assistant Secretary of Education, Paul Ketchum, to come to the podium.
Dr. Jenner, members of the board, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to stand before you today. I have the honor of kicking off this robust presentation and celebration. We have some amazing school leaders and school educators behind us. We have our assessment team behind us. This is truly a day for Indiana to celebrate. So what you'll see on today's agenda is three main buckets of information we'll be sharing with you. Our 25-26 iRead results, as well as our 25-26 Island results. And then finally, I'll review our 25-26 SAT results. So as any great team, we've divided and conquered this presentation. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to bring to the podium our Chief Academic Officer, Ms. Anna Schultz.
Good morning. Paul said robust, so I'm ready to bring it. Didn't work out this morning, but I'll do what I can. It has been said today already by Secretary Jenner and by the vibe and energy in the room. Today is an awesome, awesome day. I'm here today representing the thousands of educators in our state in grades 2 through 8 that have poured into all things I read and I learn, and certainly our high school teachers that continue that good work in our SAT. Our audience is full today of those at the department that have touched various aspects of this work. And so I don't know, I think I maybe drew the short stick, the long stick, I don't know, but I am here speaking on behalf of all of them. We're going to kick off our presentation today with all things I read. And so let's start by anybody at the Department of Education, either in our assessment team or on our literacy team, that pours into iRead every day. You are the ones that guide these efforts at the state level. If that is you, can you please stand? Always a great team, right? All right, let's dig in. Other direction. Maybe.
Yeah, you were right.
I left you hanging.
Yeah.
so much for the great team, right?
Only strongest is the weakest.
That's right. That's right. All right. We're going to start with some level setting on all things I read. If I were to give you a pop quiz on I read, all of you would pass this. None of this is anything new. As a reminder, I read is taken in grades 2 and in grades 3. If a second grader passes in grade 2, they have demonstrated that they are a reader and they do not have to take it again in grade 3. When we talk about I read, we're talking specifically about foundational literacy skills. So we're talking about the things like phonics and phonemic awareness, and certainly comprehension is a skill that doesn't go away when you are deemed a reader. You are just continuing to comprehend with more complex texts. The last bullet is talking about that performance on I read is certainly a correlation to life beyond grade 2 and future success for our Hoosier students. As we continue to level set before we dig into all of the good stuff, let's talk a little bit about this past year's assessment and through lines that we see in this assessment during every administration. The top of this slide is just a reminder that today we're going to talk about raw data as we go through both I read and I learn. These results do not include data from our students that participate in the IM assessment, which is our federal special education assessment, but federally capped at no more than 1% of our student population. As we talk about pass rates, think about what we just shared in regards to second grade students. Those second graders that passed it last year are a part of this year's third grade results. Think about it as moving like a graduation cohort. So the results that we look at today will include last year's second graders that did pass. And as a reminder, this is an assessment that is administered in person, even for our virtual programs and schools, and it is given electronically. As we think about I read in particular, I read is a fixed form. It is not an assessment that is computer adaptive. Over the last 5-6 years, certainly coming to fruition in Secretary Jenner's term, but even many, many years before that, we've had a couple really important policies that have allowed us to really dig deep and to focus on these foundational reading skills with our young Hoosier students. All second graders have an opportunity to participate in I read. They have 5 opportunities. They take it certainly during the traditional spring administration. They have an opportunity to retest. They take it again in grade 3 up until 3 times. The law, regardless if we're talking about second graders or third graders, requires schools to provide intervention to students in between takes. It does mean no good to have a student that does not pass and then me cross my fingers and pray that they will pass the next go around. So schools are very intentional about pouring into students that have been deemed at risk or do not pass. That summer training or the summer school that they receive and those interventions is required to have a teacher that has been trained in science of reading supports. And as we mentioned in that last bullet, they continue to receive interventions, including those students who did receive a good cause exemption as they continue to retest, which now allows students to do so up until the summer after their 6th grade year. Was I right? Would you have passed that test?
Yes.
Good job. All right, so let's get into the meat of what we want to talk about today. I have seen this presentation many times as we have been talking through it with our communications team. And as I looked at it again this morning, I thought, gosh, that second bullet needs to be in flashing letters in size 150 font, because what we're here to celebrate today is that for the 5th consecutive year, our I read scores are continuing to increase. Last year, we saw an unheard of increase of about 5%, and our trend this year is a continuation of another 1.5 percentage points growth, the second largest single year increase since the assessment began, which represents an 88.7 pass rate of our Indiana third graders, which means that we can say that we have almost 89% of our third grade students and our second grade students from last year that are proficient in their foundational reading skills. That deserve, there you go. All right, so let's start to break that apart. On the left, It is your left. On the left, you see the results of iRead since its inception in 2012. Ironically, I was at the department in 2012, as was Pat. And so I don't know if that dates myself, but it is a full circle moment to now see this arrow continue to swing back up post-COVID. Let's talk a little bit about before 2021 and since COVID after 2021. That chart we just looked at showed a steady decline in every year with the exception of one. And the pandemic, as in any subject area, as with all of the impacts that it had on our students, just continued to accelerate and enhance the literacy crisis, not just in our state, but certainly across the country. Since COVID, as I mentioned, we've had 5 straight years of foundational literacy gains in iRead, and we have the last square on this slide needs to be the talking point, I hope, that is picked up the loudest and the most. I'm just going to read it verbatim so we can all focus on it. But this is talking about how our literacy rates for every single student population have now surpassed pre-pandemic levels. As demonstrated by this slide. Secretary Jenner joked yesterday that you may need a magnifying glass, or we may need to zoom in a little bit larger on this, but there's too much good stuff to not include it all. This particular chart is color-coded at the top. You see the years across the top going from 2020, so we're looking at post-COVID until current. These subpopulations of students are along the bottom. For ease of kind of an ability to take this in quickly, you see the bars increasing and a green arrow going up at the top of every population. There's a couple of these to really call out. While we see good work happening across the board, on the right-hand side, we're looking at literacy rates are increasing for nearly every race, every ethnicity, in particular with our Black and Hispanic students. You see the third column there is highlighting the progress and the achievements of our Black students, up 18 points since COVID, which is absolutely remarkable. And our Hispanic students are in the column next to that with an equally as awesome increase since COVID of 11%. There are 2 subpopulations in here that the number of students that fall into that population is so tiny that the impact of a couple of them impacts the rest of their data overall, but certainly things to celebrate across the board. Secretary Jenner.
So a couple things that I'll point out that I'm especially proud of our educators, parents and families, and everyone who made this possible. In addition to all of our student population data, and that includes race and ethnicity, special education, EL, I mean, Anna's going to walk through that as well, socioeconomic status. We want to win for every single student. We want to improve for every single student. And our Black students in particular are within 1 percentage point of being the highest they've ever been in the state's history in reading. You can see the trajectory there is the steepest in terms of growth and how fast they have moved. So my hope is that as educators, schools, parents, and families, we can surpass that next year. For our Black students, our Hispanic students are also moving. I want to draw your attention to something we talked about a lot as a board, probably 3 and 4 years ago. It was the plateau we were seeing with Hispanic students and also EL students. You're going to see, and again, I cannot give enough praise and credit to our schools and our educators, parents and families, but you can see our Hispanic students started to move up and have continued in the past 2-3 years. You're going to see that on EL students as well, but cannot give enough praise to our people across Indiana who have just rolled their sleeves up and made this happen. As I shared with some of the board members, and I'll share with you all, when you showed that slide, Anna, with the down arrow for about a decade, and then we've seen up, up, up. Last year, when we got our 5% increase as a state, I absolutely lost some sleep. Some of you know that. Stressing about often when you see an increase that much, you might dip down the following year or you might plateau. So the fact that Indiana has moved another 1.5%, which is the second highest after last year, is just not short of remarkable. So cannot thank our people enough across Indiana.
Absolutely. It also shows such a laser-like focus, and that iRead is not synonymous with a day as an assessment happens, but part of a cultural shift in instruction. And we'll get into some of those tools and resources in a second. Aside from race and ethnicity, our eyes are always looking at special populations in regards to our special education students and our English language learners. Here you see the same sort of a trend. We like green arrows or any arrows that are continuing to move up. The data highlights on this particular slide are showing that students in special education have continued to increase again for a fifth consecutive year by 14.5 percentage points post-COVID. Trend for our English language learners continues to give us things to celebrate as well. If you look at these particular arrows, we know that after remaining relatively flat for several years, we now have a trend of them jumping nearly 11 percentage points in just 2 years. As we talk about the focus at the Department of Education and our opportunities to be lasered in on populations of students, opportunities for special education teachers and our English language learning educators is always a continual focus on resources and supports to continue to engage those populations of students. All right, this slide is looking at socioeconomic status, which is also synonymous with our students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. The data highlights on this slide, I sound like a broken record, but it's a good broken record, right? We continue to have a green arrow that is pointing up on the right-hand side, which is synonymous with the fact that literacy efforts for students receiving free and reduced price meals have continued to increase by 11.5 percentage points since COVID. This is a status that is important to think about as well because it addresses all schools across the state. It's not just showing us pockets here or there. So this is doubling down statewide for sure. In summary, this slide captures all of the goodness in one spot. You know that several years ago, the state launched a target of 95% of our elementary schools or our third graders hitting that achievement rate on iRead, that proficiency rate. And we have 511 schools that have done that thus far, which is an increase of 50 schools since last year, representing about 40% of our elementary schools across the state. Since 2023, the number of those schools has more than doubled, which is certainly exciting to talk about. And I'm going to talk faster and faster so we can get to our schools that are going to show you how that they have done that today. All right, so we can relish in this data all we want, but as Secretary Jenner said, the work continues, right? And we will not rest until that percentage point is showing all of our Hoosier students can read. And so the department is very reflected on what has worked thus far and where do we go from here. We're going to highlight two of the many tactics that the team that just stood has poured their work into for the last several years. And one of them is looking at iRead at grade 2. When iRead first launched, it was synonymous with iRead 3 and an assessment that was just given in third grade. Based on the feedback that our assessment team had heard from educators and parents, based on support from the legislator and an opportunity to push some through-year assessments in the iLearn space, we have had an opportunity to really double down and look at what does it mean to prepare students so that third grade is not a gotcha. Now we have students in second grade that are required to take iRead. If you do not pass in second grade, you will have 5 opportunities to take it. If you do pass, you have deemed that you are a reader and you do not have to take it again. This proactive measure for our second grade teachers is really a comprehensive effort that starts certainly in grade 2, and the focus on science of reading instruction and literacy in our foundational grade levels is felt statewide and every elementary school you certainly walk into. This data confirms just ongoing collaboration between parents, between teachers, between building leaders, that students are receiving this ongoing support, especially for those students in 2nd grade who are deemed not quite proficient in reading. All right, so let's look at 2nd grade data. It says in capital letters at the top of this slide with the word 2nd grade underlined, but I do want to reinforce that we're not looking at spring, summer for 2025 2nd graders and comparing them to how they did this year in grade 3. This is raw data for 2nd graders from last year in 25 and 2nd graders from this prior school year in 26. You see the passing rate has increased 14 points from last year's 2nd graders to this year's 2nd graders. When we think about passing and on track, we're looking at 69% of our 2nd graders have passed or have been deemed on track on iRead at the 2nd grade level. If you look, my mind always goes, or my eyes always go to, how are we moving the students that are at risk? And if you, again, we're not comparing same students, right? This is one year 2nd grade and this past year 2nd grade. But if you look at the movement of students, that is always important to just showing that our interventions are working. All right, so if we think about iRead in grade 2, other key takeaways are looking at Indiana's on-track indicator. This is a strong predictor of future success, and we have over 95% of our students who were on track last year have passed in 2026. So this is the opposite of what I just said. This is now taking last year's 2nd graders and looking at this year. With the help of this early indicator, this is the targeted supports that followed, we have over 61% of 2nd graders who were at risk last year went on to pass this year, which again is ensuring that this assessment is just not synonymous with a date on a calendar, but is part of an instruction and intervention cycle. Tactic number 2 is one that we certainly celebrate as well, with the generosity of both our legislators and the Lilly Foundation. But this is highlighting the cadre effort that has happened certainly since 2022. We have just kicked out our 5th cohort, which is miraculously now reached approximately 770 schools have been able to participate in the literacy cadre. As a reminder, the cadre experience allows for really intense instructional coaching and support aligned to the science of reading, with the goal of infusing within that school all the tools and resources, knowledge that they need, and then getting out of their way and allowing them to continue that good work. As we look at the cadre participation over the years, we have legislation that has required participation tied to a school's iRead performance, has always been 70% or below. This year, it has increased to 75% or below. So we continue to raise the bar and double down on what is expected for our students. As we specifically look at cadre data, the overall growth for schools who participate in the literacy cadre is nearly 4 times that of schools that did not participate. You see the massive green bar at the top of the slide and the statewide growth at the bottom. All right, so if we think about additional supports for the populations that touch iRead the most, right? Our teachers, our parents, and our students. We have 4 key strategies that we've highlighted on this slide. We could have easily had 40, but again, if we want to paint a picture of comprehensive supports for instruction tied to our early readers, the first bullet is looking at a universal reading screener. In simple language, this simply means we identify kids early in grades K1 and 2 that may not be on track to become proficient readers. We then have very robust assessment and instructional frameworks that continue to be living, breathing documents that provide educators and families an opportunity to better understand what that standard is getting at with instructional tools and resources that impacts their classroom instruction. Assessing reading ability on both iLearn checkpoints and the summative assessment via Lexile scores is not a typo on this slide. As we talk about iRead and iLearn, there is certainly some intentional overlap. When we talk about iLearn in a minute, we will talk more about checkpoints. But as you are aware, our iLearn assessment has gone to through-year assessments, and those through-year assessments provide what we call a Lexile score. That Lexile score tells me the complexity of a text that Paul is able to digest, and that Lexile score then guides my instruction as a classroom teacher to know what sort of text I can put in front of a scholar and what I need to do to ensure that they can comprehend and process the vocabulary in that text. And then the last bullet up here again is looking at the department's responsibility to help school districts vet awesome curriculum and frankly curriculum that may not be so awesome. And so we provide an advisory list, a HQCM list. In other states, you may hear it to be HQIM, but it's looking at the same thing. What are our curricular resources that educators can have faith and confidence that this has been vetted to align with the science of reading? It is a research-based curriculum and program, and it avoids leaving things to chance, right? They can follow that curriculum and be guaranteed pretty viable results. As we step out a little bit broader from the tools and resources that the department is directly providing, we know that Summer Learning Labs, which is something that Secretary Jenner highlighted at the beginning of this conversation, continues to thrive. This was an endeavor that primarily started in Indianapolis, I believe, and is now spread out statewide, reaching some of our rural communities across the state. The early literacy endorsement, again, has been a legislative push that has also been supported by our partnership and philanthropic generosity with Lilly that provides teacher training in the science of reading. We now have the CESA one-stop shop, which is accurate in the Indiana Learning Lab. If you're not familiar with the Indiana Learning Lab, think of it as like an online mecca for professional development that our digital learning team manages and all of the department contributes to. And so professional learning opportunities certainly tied in this case to reading, but across the board, it's a great spot for both parents and for educators to go. Last summer, I believe Secretary Jenner and I started a conversation with you about outcomes-based contracting, and we're jazzed to be able to finish that with you at a later date, but simply wanted to acknowledge that it has been launched. It is on track, and it is happening in our middle schools across the state, and that is continued to drive reading improvements. The goal is to put that pilot out of a job in terms of targeting middle school students because they all enter middle school with an ability to read. So that was important on this slide, even though we're talking about grades 2 and 3. And then, as you are aware, Secretary Jenner now has purview over our state library system. And so the Dolly Parton Imagination Library is something that lives with our state libraries. And this is increasing access to books very, very early for our youngest Hoosiers. And my understanding is that this is at scale or scaling up really quickly, right? Nearly statewide as well. So if we think about no time to waste and no opportunity to rest, there are students out there that are still deemed struggling readers, and everybody is focused on the additional supports that those students certainly need. As more and more students continue to master reading by the end of grade 3, our ability to double down becomes very laser-like and very focused, which means strategic evidence-based supports to support these students that need them the most. And this targeted approach is just really, really essential to ensure that next year we can be standing in front of you talking about continued increase and gains in strong literacy skills that we've seen from our students across the state. And finally, the best part of everything that Secretary Jenner and I have to share today is uplifting 2 of our schools that are here today.
Yeah, so Anna, first of all, huge thank you to you and the whole team. I know some are support. Some of our team here is supporting the literacy cadre. Some are supporting, other building the framework. So huge shout out, thank you to you. Before I introduce a couple of outstanding schools that I want you to hear from, I do want to pause and see if the board has any questions, comments for Anna and team.
Just
DJ.
a comment, if I could. I don't want it to get lost. I'm a sports guy. So when you have your best year in school history, it's really hard to follow that up and outdo the year that you had before. So I don't want it to get lost with the generational jump that we made last year. To still have that arrow be green and pointing up is a feat that we are, and every teacher in the state of Indiana should be really, really proud of. It's amazing.
Great comment. Thank you, Pat.
With the cadre, have all of our elementaries now had that experience? I totaled up 2,063 elementary schools have somehow are either participating in the cadres. Do we know, have we got them all yet?
So Anna, jump in. I think the chart that you were looking at,
Yeah.
Pat, is a cumulative number. So it builds. If you could go back to that slide, actually, so we can point to. And it's funny that you even mentioned this because we debated on how to show this so it wouldn't be confusing. And I think maybe we missed. So this is a cumulative total. So in 22, we started with 41. We added additional. Then we in total served 199. Then we added additional. Then in total, we served 489. So it's
Okay.
not a
It's
sum. It's
Okay.
770 in total. Because the grade bands in Indiana vary. We have some schools that serve K2, some schools that are 3-7. I mean, it really varies. I think in the second, third grade, depending on which grade band you look at, we range between about 1,200 and 1,300 schools. And again, it depends on how you calculate the grade bands and the exact number. What we're really looking hard at, and Anna, you might speak to this, is we started with this as an opt-in. In cohort 1, 41 schools, that was an opt-in. Now we have an opt-in plus the General Assembly has in statute, which is helpful because it means we'll have financial support. We have, in addition to private dollars like Lilly Endowment that we've received, but we initially back in, I think 23, the law passed, or maybe 22, it's all blurry. The law passed that if a school was under 70% of students reading, they would be required to be a part of the cadre. So it pulled the opt-in plus the schools that were under that 70%. Because of how fast we moved, this past legislative session shifted that. And again, I see the superintendents and principals associations here. They were huge advocates as well. We shifted it to 75% of kids reading. I imagine as we continue to improve, we'll continue to increase that in order to make sure the resources and supports go to where we need it the most. But I'm glad you flagged that. We'll note to self, Pat, that it was not as clear as we were hoping it would be, which you learn sometimes. But great question. Any
Well,
follow-up? Go ahead.
I think that's part of the success of the model. Having instructional coaches in buildings who
Yes.
can help assist teachers and go out and field test lesson plans and look at data. We're all strapped for time. But when you have the investment of instructional coaches, that's how you can continue to get those results. And as we look to mathematics next, that instructional coaches role just becomes that much more important. So anything we can do to have our legislators continue to find some funding to help all of our schools have instructional coaches, especially at the foundational level, that K-6 level, that will help serve the students in Indiana.
Thank you for that. William.
Yeah, I'd just like to highlight a bullet point that I thought was really, really important and impressive, and that was over 61% of second graders who were at risk last year went on to pass in 2026. And so I thought that was huge, and it's a huge testament to the hard work of not only the teachers, instructional coaches, but also the parents and the students that put in that hard work as well. So I just wanted to highlight that tremendous, tremendous work.
Yeah, great. And that was, and Scott, you'll be next. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was when we added, if you all remember, the second grade iRead. I was at first kind of reticent to do that because I thought, oh, one more assessment, it's got to be worth it. But teachers and our academics team at the time really came forward and said, you know what, if you could make it so that we could really understand where a child is, are they on track? Are they already readers? Are they at risk? So I'm glad that you flagged that. The fact that we've moved those kids that were at risk in second grade, who were not predicted to pass, into a reader. Again, huge shout out to our people. Thank you, William, for flagging that. Scott.
Yeah, every state in the country, they're in their education departments, they talk about, we're here for every student. We're here for all students. But then you look at their outcomes, and you're like, I don't know that you're here for those students, because you see these gaps in performance. And I think the thing that's most gratifying about the reading results is, over the last 5 or 6 years, we have dramatically closed gaps, right? When Anna talked earlier about, every subgroup showed improvement. If you look at, our Black students, our Hispanic students, our low income students, our special education students, our ELL students, those are groups that historically across the country have lagged behind and continue to lag behind. And states just tout, look what's happening with everybody else, just don't pay any attention over here. And I think we've been able to shine a spotlight on that, and to see that kind of performance across every subgroup is remarkable. And I think that reflects the intentionality, as Pat said, getting those instructional coaches into the schools that need it the most, right? We're seeing those schools increase, which now is driving, I think that's why we've kept that momentum going with keeping that historic performance last year, keep that momentum going, because we're paying attention and putting resources into every student, not just those that have always had it before. So that's a remarkable achievement.
Thank you, Scott. And I am not able to see those online. Can you tell me, do they have a hand raised or anything online? If not, no pressure. I don't see any. Okay. We can go back to the school celebrations, and without any more delay, I'll first invite the team from the county I drive by through, I feel like every day of my life. Bartholomew County team, the Columbus, Indiana team is here. And I'm going to actually introduce all of them and have them come up. Superintendent Chad Phillips, Director of Elementary Education, Dr. Laura Hack, Principal Chris Smith, Special Education Director Jessica Vogel, Special Education Teacher Lars McCann, and Literacy Coach Ashley Kreitschjans. And I hope I got your name right, Ashley. Did I? Let's get it right. What is it?
Ashley Kreitschjans. And
Say it
Lars
again.
McCain
Kreitschjans,
and McCain.
Ashley Kreitschjans, and Lars McCain.
Yes.
And see, that's why I said initially that I'm going to have you introduce. And I just changed my plan on the fly, and it did not go as well as I thought. We appreciate all of you for being here. And Parkside Elementary, tell us how you were able to get the reading scores and the success that you did.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to say I brought these people with me because we have 3 of our really great leaders here that you introduced, and 2 of my rock stars from Parkside Elementary School. I say that 2 of my rock stars because I would have liked to have brought my entire primary team with me today. But on the 5th day of school, I didn't think that was probably a wise idea. So I brought my instructional coach and one of my special ed teachers. And it's just an exciting time. We've watched a lot of growth. But if you don't mind, since we're here about reading today, if you'd forgive me, I'd like to read the remainder of my remarks because I'm not a very good impromptu speaker. So
Please.
I put it on paper. And I don't see very well without these either. So let me do this. Let me begin by expressing my sincere gratitude to you, Dr. Jenner, and the board, and the Lilly Endowment, and our state legislature for championing and putting in place something that was not intentionally embedded in our work 4 years ago. A statewide commitment to research-based best practices of the science of reading. To be clear, our teachers at Parkside and the entire BCSC, and I'm sure across the state, were working very hard then, just as they are today. What changed was our collective focus on the resources and the support needed to get results. Our work became more intentional, more purposeful, and laser focused on research-based instructional practices that have the power to make a lasting difference in the lives of our students. I can stand here today and say thank you, but it was with genuine sincerity because of this collective commitment to literacy and the evidence-based practices. The trajectory of our children's lives have been positively changed, and that impact will extend far beyond the classroom. We're proud at Parkside to celebrate 3 consecutive years of growth on iRead. Actually, it's been 5, but the last 3 the most, from 88 to 92 to 90%, 96%, a little over 96%, I believe, on the iRead assessment. That demonstrates the impact of our intentional focus on early literacy and high expectations for all students. For the past 2 years, we've been part of the literacy cadre, where our staff has worked diligently to strengthen literacy instruction through research-based teaching practices grounded in the science of reading. Since the school corporation identified improving foundational reading skills as one of our 7 strategic focus areas, all 11 of our elementary schools in Columbus have focused on implementing effective instructional strategies. We use student data to guide instruction and ensure that all students receive the support they need to be successful readers. Now this year, this is super exciting. Parkside, 96 proficiency rate surpasses the 95% goal that was set by the state. But we're especially proud of 100% passing rate for our students with special needs. Among the students in Indiana with 100% pass rate for students with special education, Parkside assessed the highest number of students in that area and still passed 100%. Rock star. The achievement is a powerful reflection of our belief that every student can succeed when provided with high quality instruction, intentional support, and high expectations. What makes this result especially meaningful is the intentional partnership between our general education teachers and our special education teachers. That's not always been as smooth as it has been, but I've watched that grow over the last 2-3 years. Our students receiving special education services are not viewed as separate from our literacy work. They are an integral part of it. Special education teachers and our primary teachers work together to analyze student data, identify individual needs, provide specifically designed instruction, and ensure students have access to strong evidence-based core literacy instruction. Our teachers at Parkside also understand that building relationships is a foundation for learning. By taking the time to know their students, understand their individual strengths and needs, and create classrooms where students feel safe, valued, and supported, our teachers build the trust that allows students to take risks, persevere, and grow as learners. Now, this is my favorite part of what I had to share. I don't really need to read it, but I will. A student whom I'll refer to today as Jill, that's not her real name, and you guys talked about this a lot, scored a 200 on the 2nd grade iRead. I think that's the lowest score you can get. But through consistent data collection, we could see she was making progress in the classroom. She finished 3rd grade with a score of 512 after her 2nd attempt and a lot of direct, explicit, and systematic instruction from our teachers. So throughout the year, she participated in a regular classroom, but she also loved going to her skill-based groups for Tier 1 and Tier 3 instruction. Her favorite activities, which I find incredible, she liked spelling, but the one I like is she liked going down to kindergarten to read to the kindergarten students. Now she loves to read graphic novels for fun and feels capable as a student in all subject areas. Her confidence has grown, and she says, this is what she said yesterday, it just feels good to be able to read. Because, and when we got here today, we stood outside here and talked, and Mr. McCain and I talked about 3 or 4 other students that same thing. Just to see their change, their struggle through kindergarten first, and then start to bloom in second, and then pass this in third, and their attitude, how they've changed. And really that's what this is all about. It's not about a score, although that's what we strive for as a score. It's about having successful readers and lifelong learners in the future. So that's what I'm proud about. And I have a great primary team at Parkside, and I have great leaders for the school corporation. And thank you for letting us come and share.
Thank you. And if And if you could stay put for just a moment, we'll open it up if the board has any questions or comments. And I may kick it off. I have known Dr. Laura Hack for many, many years. When I was at Madison Consolidated, followed your work, and then also Chad Phillips as superintendent. How have you systematically been able to, Bartholomew County is a good-sized school corporation in Indiana. How have you been able to systematically make shifts to see the results that you're getting not only in Parkside, but in other schools across your county? This is the impromptu test that I did not warn you about.
One thing that we know that was a big support to our work was the cadre, and making sure that our first 4 schools, that opportunity then transferred to other schools as well. We have 11 schools, and we would have loved to have put 11 schools in the cadre starting out, but we knew we wanted to go a little bit slower and to go fast at the end. And so that slow start for us really proved off in dividends, because then we were able to take what the cadre learned and then stretch that out to our other schools and then learn from them along the way as well. And then talking about every school in our district, every teacher, not on the same page with resources, but in the same text and using the same resources. So we had a common language to work from. That was huge for us. So when a teacher at Parkside said, hey, we're seeing gains here, we made sure that we were analyzing that data, talking with those teachers, talking with Chris to say what's working, and then saying, why couldn't that then work at Southside? Why couldn't that then work at Schmidt? And then talking with those teachers to make sure that happens. We also have a coach at our district level who helps organize all of that and keeps our instructional coaches informed. So the work that you put out on Fridays is instrumental in our conversations at what's happening at our district. And then we then transfer that to our schools to make sure that they're very, very well informed on anything that's coming down. So thank you for those Friday newsletters.
Great. Well, all the credit to, again, the work that you all have done. Other questions, comments from board members?
I hope that you celebrate this. I mean, we don't always take the time to celebrate our wins because we stay grinding so much. But I mean, your boss just nodded his head. So I think he's going to give you a little bit of time here to do that. But I mean, I know it's hard because we want to just stay the course and stay grinding. That's how you get to where you're at. But take time to celebrate the wins. I mean, this is pretty awesome. So I hope that your students and your teachers feel like they can take a moment to breathe and be like, yeah, this is why we do this.
Thank you for that. And again, humble leader when Chris Smith didn't want to come today. He was like, no, let's let our teachers do this. But Chris has been a part of that school for many years, and the work that he has done with Ashley and with his assistant principal, as well as Amy Mokus last year, it's been wonderful to see. And the confidence not only in the students, but also in their team growing as well. And you're right. We always do like, oh, why didn't we get those 2/10 more? We could have, it is important for us to celebrate. And sometimes think as humans, we always look as why, oh, I wish we would have. But this time we really need to say, wow, we did.
Yeah.
Good.
Fantastic. And just would love, Mr. McCain, if you could share, your principal called you a rock star. And I understand you were maybe the special education teacher. You got 100% special education. And I can tell you do not want to come to the mic. So I mean, that's really remarkable. And if nothing else, just to say thank you for all the work that you've done, and any, I guess, lessons learned that you'd like to share with others.
I would like to thank this guy right here. He has taught me everything. Not everything. There's been some great teachers as well, but he's amazing.
He supported you.
Yes.
I just like to say what has happened in the culture at the school is people have gone, because of the literacy cadre, people have gone to Ashley. She has been through the training. I've been through some, what the principals have to do. She's been through a lot, and they go to her, and he was first to jump on board and say, hey, teach me what I need to know to help these kids learn how to read.
Wow.
So he can take what they're doing in the classrooms and he can continue or meet their needs where they are if he does a small group or a tier 3 instruction or something like that. So it was on him. He doesn't like to say so, but he went to her and got the help.
Yes, then Mr. Smith and the cadre, whoever came up with that idea, really.
Started in Mississippi. We just copied it. If you really want to know.
He's right. Me and Ashley, this is our second year doing this together, and we have spent a lot of time. We've talked a lot, and it's not, we have 4 great third grade teachers. It's not, everybody works together. And to me, that's the most important thing is that you have to look at it as a group. Everybody, we all want what's best for our kids. Everybody wants what's best for their kids. And I feel like we all just kind of do that.
And it starts in pre-K. I mean,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
We have pre-K at the school.
Yeah.
We come all the way up to third.
Yeah. Great.
I love this, but I think this goes back to Pat's question earlier about the schools that have been impacted. I don't know if we really know that number because you see that 777 probably may not stand true because you have schools that have gone through it, and the model that Chad has in place here, all of his schools are now impacted, even though all the schools didn't go through the cadre. So like I don't know if the EVSC is doing this, but I want us to. So we're not too proud to steal. So I may maybe call and reach out to ask some questions.
I'm happy to. I'll talk to anybody. I don't care. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Well, I mean, I could quiz all of you. We'll hold on that, but just on behalf of the whole state, thank you. Keep doing great work. I know some of the schools that we've honored in the past, we could have brought them back again this year because they continue to move the needle for kids, and I hope you do as well, and I feel certain you will. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Jenner?
Oh, and Erica has a question. Dr. Phillips, hold on. Yeah, go ahead, Erica. Sorry, I did not see your hand. Go ahead.
That's okay. I just have a comment about the 100% pass rate for students with special needs. As a special educator, first of all, as an educator, it's totally, difficult to receive a 100% pass rate. But when it comes to educating students with special needs, the district is just really showing that they have a culture where students are not defined by their challenges, but empowered by their strengths, and really just honing in on the individual needs of students to make sure everyone is successful. I'm just so excited to hear that news, and just kudos to you for all of the hard work that has been poured into these students. I know it wasn't just the educators, it had to be the parents, it had to be the students, everyone invested, and I'm just so glad to hear of the success that you guys have had.
Thank you for saying that, Erica. I'll just reiterate, our educators in this state are capable of anything. We have 2,000 employees in Bartholomew Consolidated School Corporation in Columbus, and they're capable of anything given the support, the focus, the accountability that came with this initiative. And I as long as those things remain, I believe, Dr. Jenner, what you said will continue. There will continue to be schools come back repeatedly, new schools that are added to these long list of successes, because our educators can do anything given the support and the resources they need to make it happen.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you, Erica, for your comment as well. All right. Next, we will invite the team from St. Anthony Catholic School in Indianapolis. And I'm going to attempt to introduce as well, so you let me know about last name. Madeline Shepherds is the principal who will be here today. And then Jonathan Grismore is the assistant principal. So we're so glad to have you to learn more about how you jumped from 54.2% to 100%. How did you do that?
We also have Dr. Brian Disney, who's our superintendent.
Dr.
here with
Brian
us.
Disney, I don't know how I missed you, sir. Come on up. Dr. Brian Disney is in my office fairly often, is one of the many educators in various focus groups giving thoughts. And so, yes, I'm so glad you're here too. Yes.
Again, my name is Madeline Sheppers. I'm the principal at St. Anthony. It is our second day of school, so there are a lot more people I wish that we could have brought here as well, teachers and our cadre coach, but we're just getting into the first 2 days. So thank you for having me here and allowing me to share the story. I spent the majority of my teaching career as a middle school English teacher, so the story behind something is what's important to me in my heart. So that's what I want to share with you. Some things, if you are unfamiliar with St. Anthony, we are a Catholic school in downtown Indianapolis. We serve a student population that is 99% Hispanic, and they receive community eligibility for free and reduced lunch. So last year, Mr. Grismore and I sat down in July and we set our goals for the year. And that goal was very clear that our third grade students would pass with 100% proficiency on iRead. We wrote that on a whiteboard and we worked towards that every single day. When we said 100%, we meant 100%, and that was a commitment from everyone. That was our classroom teachers, our support staff, our literacy coach, administrators, students, and families. This past year, that commitment resulted in our 100% of our third grade students passing iRead, which was an increase of nearly 46 percentage points from that 54.2 the previous year. I think the most important part of that story, though, is that success didn't happen just in 1 year. This particular cohort of students, these third graders, have experienced 3 years of really intentional, intensive literacy instruction. The prior school year, we saw a 33.1 percentage point increase, getting our students to that 54.2, and then another 10% was added of percentage point increase to get to 100 this past year. For us, that progression is powerful and evidence of something that we have come to believe very strongly at St. Anthony, which is that consistency and an unwavering focus on our high-quality literacy instruction creates the growth. There wasn't one program, one intervention, one person responsible for the result. It was the cumulative effort of everyone doing the next right thing consistently over time. I think a critical part of our work has been moving beyond simply asking who was below benchmark and asking specifically, what does this child need next? We used our Acadience data. We did frequent progress monitoring to identify individual student needs and continuously adjusted our instruction accordingly. That data informed every literacy team meeting, our small groups, our interventions, individualized instruction. Students were not simply placed into a low group and left there for the year. Their progress was monitored and their groups were fluid, and the instruction changed as their needs changed. Our teachers knew their students as readers. They knew who needed additional work in phonemic awareness. They knew who needed decoding support. They knew who needed fluency practice, and they knew when a student was ready to move on. Serving the students of St. Anthony also means being very intentional about our language supports. For many of our students, learning to read proficiency in English is happening alongside learning English itself. That means explicit vocabulary instruction, visuals, modeling, repetition, opportunities for oral language acquisition, and making sure students can access rigorous grade level instruction while they still receive that language support. We never wanted language to become a reason to lower our expectations. Instead, we asked, what support does the student need to reach the same high expectation? I also believe that building our adult capacity was a key component of our student success. So we recognized that if we wanted students to become stronger readers, we had to continue being stronger teachers of reading. We're a small school, so our third and fourth grade classroom teachers, our literacy coach, and I as the principal all completed the Indiana Keys to Literacy endorsement over the last 2 years. This was a shared professional learning experience, and I think that was incredibly valuable to us to have that common knowledge and common language around evidence-based literacy instruction. As a principal, it changed my ability to support my teachers. I could walk into a classroom. We could look at data. We could participate in instructional conversations and better understand both what our teachers were doing and the why behind what they were doing. Literacy wasn't something that I was simply asking my teachers to improve. It became work that we were participating in together. And so we knew we needed to build this support across all areas. So parents were also intentionally brought into the literacy conversation through our work with the Indiana Literacy Cadre. They helped support us in planning family involvement events and communication about what our students were learning back to their parents in their home language. We wanted families to understand that literacy wasn't confined to the school day, and when the parents understood what their kids were working toward and how they could support them, then they became another important part of our team surrounding each child. And then came March, and then came results. So I truly wish that I could show you a video of what it looked like in my office or in Mr. Grismore's office when we would tell a student that they passed. They were crying. They were jumping up and down. They were, can I call my mom? And we would call a parent and put them on speakerphone, and you could hear the pride in everyone's voice in that room. I cried with every kid that was so proud of how hard they worked last year. Our students understood exactly what that meant. They knew that they put in the work, and they knew the result that they had achieved. And that's why we do this. Behind that 100% statistic are individual children who now see themselves differently. A child who struggled to read in a second language is now a child who knows that they can do hard things. And our students didn't suddenly become capable when they reached third grade. They were always capable of this. What changed was the strength and the consistency and the precision of our literacy systems surrounding them. So we set that goal, we set a 100% goal, and our teachers and staff gave 100%. Our students gave 100%, and 100% of them crossed that finish line. So this is a number we are really, really proud of, but I'm more proud of the readers behind that number.
Wow, great.
Yeah, I can only imagine the line of kids coming in and the excitement that you shared, and with 100%, you had a lot of tears flowing. I'm certain. Questions, comments from board members? Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I think, and I'll combine the two groups. It was remarkable to me that you heard common language, the culture of high expectations, the focus of the groups, and the support, using the support and the resources that were provided. And I think, I say this a lot with folks, like leadership matters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what you've seen here is extraordinary leadership from two different schools, serving two different populations, but one that most people would say those are really challenging populations, right? You have English language learners, you have special education kids, and well, maybe not. And I think the leadership in these schools said, no, yes, we will. Mm-hmm. And then the leadership at the state level saying, no, we're gonna put resources into these kids. It goes back to what I said earlier, like every kid.
Every kid.
And I think what you guys have done is extraordinary in just creating that focus and supporting your teachers, supporting the students, and again, showing leadership. And I think that's the lesson that I would take and extrapolate across statewide, is when we're looking at schools that are high performing, especially with student populations that people would not predict to be high performing, it's leadership. And I think that's a challenge for us as a state to continue to look at that and how can we foster that and create more people who are providing extraordinary leadership like you guys and in the folks from Parkside. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent observation. Thank you, Scott. Would you mind to see if there's any hand raise from the other board members? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I really would like to give Dr. Brian Disney a tough question. Kidding. One thing that I wrote down, and it hits on leadership as well, Scott, is, you shared the teachers did the keys to literacy training, but you did the keys to literacy training as well. You committed, and that's not a state requirement, right? You committed to doing the work so that you could go into the classrooms and have the top-notch, most educated conversation about, evidence-based instruction possible with your teachers. Again, so many different takeaways that we could pull out, but huge congratulations to St. Anthony. Thank you for leading the way. Any comments that you all would like to add?
I was going to throw one more.
Yeah,
thing
come
in
on
there.
up to the mic.
Oh, okay. You guys spend a lot of time with the data, which is awesome. So of the second to third graders that pass, and I think looking at the third or fourth graders that pass, because we have the 54%,
Yes.
but all but 2 of those did not pass this past year too. So
Yeah.
it's not just a second and third grade thing.
Oh, I love
It's
that point.
ensuring that continuation is going on. Even if we had that exemption, that we're still and being intentional with those students as well. So that's just as equally as proud for our school as having that too. So
And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, Mr. Grismore, because that was another adjustment that we recently made in the past year or so, because what we realized as a state is if students received a good cause exemption in third grade and moved on, we really lost track of them as a reader or not. We never could affirm if they were reading. And so now we do have that data, and it's certainly a data point that our team will pull out and dig into a bit more. Thank you for flagging that about your fourth grade students as well. Great.
thank you guys.
Yes, Dr. Disney.
And I'll just share real quickly here. We have the broad range of schools. There's 69 Catholic schools, 23,000 students that we serve in communities all over central and southern Indiana. And what I'm so proud of is that we're now out of the schools, everybody was 70 or over this year amongst all of our Catholic schools, as where we had 7 or 8 of them below just 2 years ago. And so it's quite a credit to not just the St. Anthony, definitely them, but our others as well, as they've made that. And it's great to hear the conversation changing to, yes, we're achieving high on iRead. How do we now get our students to read to learn and perform better on the iLearn assessment? And so that's a fun thing for us to see what's going on, but so proud of these 2 and their whole school and the community, because it's a whole village. And what we found is those that engage their parents, of those, especially our students that struggle with some learning, engaging their parents has been one of the keys that really raise success. So,
Super.
Thank you.
So we have been asked, number one, to get you all back to school, our educators who are in the room, but also we have a lot of media in the room that I think would like to connect with you. So we are going to take a very quick pause. People can run to the restroom. Those of you who are educators can go back to school, and then we'll be back to discuss the remaining data points. So board members, there is some coffee, and there's coffee and bagels over here, but we'll take about 10 minutes and be right back here. Thank you so much. Are we back live? Yes. Okay, fantastic. So now we're going to shift to some additional updates that Anna will also share with iLearn. Of course, we had a new cut score setting process, which was triggered by state laws. So she'll explain all of that. But before I do that, this will be kind of the transition, I think. BJ Watts has a school that he'd like to call out as well. So go ahead, BJ.
I just want to practice what I preach here. And I said to celebrate our wins. We have a school, Kays Elementary, 70% free and reduced, 40% multilingual, with I wrote this down to myself, 42% pass rate in 2022, and they were at 97 this year. So
Awesome.
I hope that every school out there amazing, great stuff. And it comes back to, I'm going to quote Scotty, like great leadership. And you can see that throughout the building. But I hope that every school out there, I know there's success stories all over the state. So I plead with you, please celebrate the win. It's something we should be proud of. And I'm certainly proud of Case. Good job.
Awesome. We
All
hope
right.
social medias today is certainly popping from superintendents and principals celebrating those wins for sure. All right, we're going to switch gears. We come off of big highs with iRead, and I appreciate everybody following along and asking good questions along the way. We're going to shift and we're going to talk about iLearn. Still a lot of goodness to celebrate and to acknowledge here as we work through these slides. Paul and I are going to do some tag teaming, and it's finally his time to pitch hit some here. So we're going to divide and conquer as we think about iLearn. Just like we did with iRead, though, I would be remiss if I didn't say my job today is to stand and speak. I'm not the one that's in the trenches every single day as our assessment team is. Our assessment team is here today, led by the Deputy Chief of Academics, Lynn Schimmel. You know Lynn well. Mary is her assistant director, and the entire assessment team that has an opportunity to engage with iLearn day in and day out. So those of you that touch iLearn, please stand so you can be acknowledged. Awesome. All right, let's dig in. Just like we did with iRead, we're going to do some level setting in iLearn. No quiz here, but I bet you could answer all 4 of these bullets ahead of me as well. As we know, iLearn just Indiana specific. There's no other state that has an iLearn. It is unique to Indiana as it aligns with our academic standards. This assessment is taken by all students in grades 3 through 8. It is a rigorous measure of our academic standards. I think sometimes the soundbite is iLearn is a really hard test. What is really difficult and what we hold our students to are the academic demands that we know that they need to have in order to excel post high school. Our standards align with that, and our assessment certainly aligns and supports that. So we certainly say that iLearn is a rigorous measure of our students' ability to be on track for that. I think it is important that while we are talking about iLearn today, to know that it is just one measure of student success. There are lots of other opportunities that our teachers and our students have. You see that carry out in our new accountability model, other measures that are important to understand the full range of a scholar's abilities and skills. All right, before we dive in, again, just like iRead, we are going to be looking at raw data in both English language arts, which we abbreviate ELA, and mathematics for our students in grades 3 through 8. These do not include those students who participated in IM, which is a reminder is our a special education assessment for students with severe cognitive disabilities. Pass rates that we're going to look at today are couched in 2 different buckets. We're going to talk a little bit about the levels of what we deem proficient on iLearn. There are 4 of those levels, but when we talk about students that are included in our pass rates, we're looking at 2 of those 4. Those are our students that are at proficient, which we think of at grade level or above proficient. And as a reminder, iLearn is computer adaptive, which means how I do on questions 1 through 5 may trigger the questions that come 6, 7, and 8. And how I do on questions 1 through 5 might be different than how Paul does. And the assessment is adjusted, unlike iRead when we're dealing with a fixed form. These assessments for all students in Indiana, unless there are special accommodations that are needed per student, are given in person. So again, for our virtual schools and programs as well, and electronically. All right, a little bit more level setting on iLearn that explains part of the conversations that we will have today. And that is we had some key milestones within the last 4 years that have really led up to the conversations we're having today. One came out of legislative session in 2022, and that was House Enrolled Act 1251. As you may recall, for those of you that have been in the board, certainly since then, this required the department to do some really, really hardcore work with Indiana educators to help streamline and prioritize our standards, which internally really meant reducing and uplifting standards that we deemed essential. The slide uses the word prioritize. Your educators and your communities will use the word essential standards. These then new sets of standards that were streamlined and were prioritized then requires the assessment to adjust and adapt to ensure that we are assessing students on what they are now being taught. So House Enrolled Act 1243 from several years ago allowed for the redesign of iLearn from simply a summative measure that happened in the spring to a through-year assessment. Sometimes you hear this referred to as iLearn checkpoints. It says right there. There are 3 checkpoints that are given beginning of the year, middle of the year, and in the spring. Those through-year assessment checkpoints then lead up to the summative assessment, which has been shortened. We're going to talk a little bit about how those through-year assessment performance is communicated to parents and the value of those through-year assessments to educators. But that has been a monumental lift on the team that I have the opportunity to support and uplift, and it built as input and feedback from educators across the state. Last school year was the first year that all students in grades 3 through 8 participated in the through-year assessment, which we know then was aligned to these new streamlined and essential standards. And so the scores that we are going to talk about today, I cannot stress enough, are not in comparison to previous year's scores. We are looking at today's data that will establish, or does establish, a new baseline for how we think about and how we talk about iLearn scores moving forward based on a rigorous cut score setting process that recently occurred this summer. All right, so I mentioned that iLearn is discussed in classrooms across the state with 4 different proficiency levels. As we think about the pass rates today that Paul is going to dig into, we're going to be thinking about 2 of those 4. Our pass rates include those scholars that are at proficient or are above proficient. But we also have scholars that we would say are below proficient. This means a student has not yet mastered grade level standards. Sometimes that's synonymous with they just need a little bit more time. Maybe they just need a little bit more support. But the gaps that they have on grade level content is clear. Those students that are approaching proficiency means they've almost mastered, or maybe they've mastered some but not all, or to varying depths of mastery. So they continue to need additional support to build that grade level knowledge that would then transfer into how we deem our proficient scholars. All right, Paul is going to help us analyze and dig into the data.
Anna Schultz is an example that elementary teacher energy is a real thing, right? I am a former high school teacher, and Greg, I don't put you on the spot. Sometimes we needed 2 cups of coffee before we got ramped up in the morning, right? So, but I'm ramped up now. I'm ready to go. And what I do know across all 92 counties that our educators know that positive energy is a secret sauce for student outcomes, right? So we're here to make sure that students get things done in the classroom. On our pre-briefs, and obviously Pat Mapes and I were our former superintendents, we always talked about winning for students. And what does that mean to win for students? And that means that we establish a baseline where students are at. What you'll see before you today, members of the board, are the percentage of our state averages from grades 3 through 8, which are our bandwidth for iLearn testing. You'll see the word at proficiency and above or at proficiency. And again, I think the word proficiency, Anna touched on, is one of those words Dr. Jenner's tasked us to making sure that stakeholders understand what proficiency means. Parents, students, community members, media, understand where proficiency is. At proficiency, above proficiency, approaching proficiency. Those are important level setting terms for us to talk about. This data, again, is a new test from a reduced number of standards. The Indiana academic standards are rigorous. This test is a great indicator of where we're at in a through-year testing. And I'll use the example as a former coach. You have in-game adjustments, you have halftime adjustments so that you can win or sometimes lose the game. What this through-year test does for us and what this baseline iLearn information does for us now allows us to make those adjustments, to put certain students who need tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 into the right classrooms and right study groups. So again, these are our scores coming out with the first year of this test. What I want to do is dive into what that really looks like and talk about how important the honesty gap is. Some states across the nation, and Dr. Jenner and the assessment team are just the opposite, will inflate proficiency rates. And that does nothing for our state, for our students. NAEP is a national standardized test for all 50 states. And the honesty gap is your state assessment as rigorous as NAEP? And Indiana scores very well, top 10, top 5 of the honesty gap. So again, we have very rigorous Indiana academic standards. We have an iLearn test that appropriately measures those standards. And then when compared by kind of a quality control such as NAEP, it goes on to say that our iLearn is a test that we can be proud of. And it does give us an accurate picture of where our students are at. So again, you'll see in front of you here on the slide, the comparison. Both iLearn, again, Dr. Jenner says this, but I can't repeat it enough. We can't compare Illinois' test to Kentucky's test to Ohio's test to iLearn. iLearn is specific to Indiana, our Indiana standards. Nationwide state assessments vary in how closely the results align with NAEP. And again, you'll see sometimes 80% proficiency rates. I won't mention states, but again, that's not really a true indication of where their students are at. Indiana ranks among the top states for this alignment, reflecting the strength and reliability of iLearn. And I think Dr. Jenner said this many times, we're all about continuous improvement. We have now a benchmark. We have reliability in our data that we're receiving today. We now go to work, and the next couple slides will talk about what that works like. We go to work so that we can move our kids in the right direction. With the 2026 NAEP data expected out in 2027, Indiana anticipates this strong alignment will continue.
Paul, if
Yes,
I may,
please.
on NAEP.
Yep.
Fair number of folks don't realize, whether it's in business and industry or even some educators, parents, and families, Indiana typically scores and does very, very well on NAEP. Reading, we're top 6 in the nation in 4th grade and 8th grade reading. Math, we also do well. But it's because I believe in Indiana, we maintain high expectations. And Scott, also to an earlier comment that you made, we expect and have high expectations for every child at all schools. So I cannot emphasize this enough, you all. It would be so easy to say, like some of our surrounding states have, that we have 70 and 80% proficiency in some of these very difficult standards in mathematics. But the honesty gap in Indiana is so important to us, and making sure that we are honest with Hoosiers, but also very high expectations that we're going to continue pushing, we're going to continue striving to improve, and we'll do certainly that. So I wanted to double down on what you said, Paul. You can't compare with any of the surrounding states or with, there's one state in the country, won't name them.
Yeah.
They have very inflated proficiency scores as a state and are one of the lowest performing in the nation, right? Indiana performs very highly in the nation, and we have a very tough assessment, tough standards. So I just want to make that very clear. Go ahead, BJ.
If I can add to that, I think it was 2018 or 2019 when this board kind of took a stance that honesty gap was really important to us. I think we want our data to have integrity.
Yep.
Because I've said earlier, we want to celebrate the wins, but we don't want to make up wins. So I appreciate the fact that we are continuing on that course. We want to take a real look in the mirror and get better every single day. But sometimes that's tough.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the fact that let's be honest, we give a really hard test.
Yeah.
But those really high expectations we've seen, our students are rising to that. So I love that we're staying the course on that. And that the results that we show will stand up with anyone in the country as far as what we truly are assessing. So I'm glad that that's still the case.
Well said, BJ. And through our preparation for this presentation, we talked about the importance of that 2018-19 board that kind of set the bar for Indiana to say that we are going to have rigorous tests. That is, there is a small honesty gap in NAEP. So thank you for doing that. Let's talk now about data. And I'm going to put my superintendent hat on as you look at the data here. And again, we talk about at proficiency, above proficiency, or approaching proficiency. Anna did a really nice job describing to you what proficiency means. What's circled on your screen to the left are the students who have rated below proficiency or approaching proficiency. That means they have some of the standards mastered, but not all the standards. At proficiency, obviously, those scholars are performing on track for four-year college education. They are where they need to be based on their grade level Indiana academic standards. And then above proficiency are the kids that are really knocking it out of the park. When you look at this map, you can say when you combine above proficiency and at proficiency, and you squeeze in approaching proficiency, those are the students who are really close to doing what they need to do, right? So that is a majority of Indiana students, upwards of 80% of students are at a minimum approaching proficiency. And again, for me, what's important on this scorecard, for lack of a better term, is the two columns to the left, below proficiency and approaching proficiency. With a through-year test, we now have real-time data with checkpoints to make sure that we're moving the needle for those students. We're adjusting what they need to be successful. And what Pat and I talked about offline as superintendents, that's the win. Our jobs as school leaders and as the state of Indiana is to give our teachers the resources to make sure they have the ability to move those students who are just on approaching proficiency forward, right? And this is, again, year zero. This is a great level set for us. This is baseline data. And I know that we'll have this slide up, plus next year's slide as well. We'll say how many students in checkpoint 1 were above proficiency or approaching proficiency. We'll have that real-time corrections, and that's invaluable for our teachers and our students. But my point is that the circle represents tens of thousands of students with additional targeted supports to have we have an incredible opportunity to help equip them to reach mastery. So again, this is not final. This is where we're at today. These scores are accurate based on our testing, but now we can roll our sleeves up as educators and get this work done. So that's what I'm excited about again. And this is a true reflection of the job our teachers are doing. I can't tell you how proud I am that approaching at and above proficiency is about 80% of our students across the state of Indiana. And that was ELA. Let's talk about math now. Now, the math data, similar. Proficiency combined with above proficiency and approaching proficiency is a majority of our students. Now, obviously, you've heard some great information about the literacy cadre and the investment that Indiana has made in the ability for students to be proficient in ELA. And Dr. Jenner obviously is very aware that in math is probably our next big lift, right? And we're going to need the support of our board and our legislators and our teachers. You'll see again in those two left columns are the number of students, percentage of students who are below or approaching proficiency. We need to dive in and do the work on a daily basis for 180 days to make sure that those students get the targeted supports they need to be successful to reach proficiency. I'll hit pause. Dr. Jenner, is there anything else you want me to talk about on the math slide that I didn't talk about?
Yes, sir. And I might have Anna or Lynn talk through the total proficiency with ELA. The range is in the 40 to 45. The grade levels are pretty similar. Whereas the math, if you go back to math, it starts at around 52% and almost every year it drops. So that was an observation, obviously, that we see, that we look closely at. It's something that we see in other states and in national data as well. But hoping you can explain to the public about why that is, and again, how we can overcome it.
Yeah, I'll pull Anna back up, but Lynn and I had some great conversations, and Anna's going to be able to articulate exactly the why.
No pressure, right? I will try to articulate the why. Let's start by thinking ELA, right? If we know that ELA and iRead in particular measure foundational reading skills, think of those as building blocks, right? In reading, for example, Once you know phonics, it's not like phonics gets any harder in grade 6. It's not like those skills get any more complex. If you can make predictions in kindergarten, you can make predictions in 2nd and 3rd grade. What changes in reading and ELA is the complexity of the passages, which is why the Lexile scores that we talked about earlier are so important. Math, think of it as maybe not the opposite, but the differences in math is if you have cracks in your foundation early, the ripple effect that that has until all other skills is harder and harder to recover from. If you think of the foundational skills that you would have in some basic numeracy concepts that are being learned in those foundational grade levels, K1 to being assessed in grade 3, coming out of the gate strong is awesome. But then you are required to continue to apply those foundational skills as the complexity of the standards and the skills continues to increase. So in grade 5, if they are doing fractions and fractions is introduced, it's really hard to do fractions if you don't understand division. And it's kind of hard to do division if you don't understand that multiplication is the inverse. And if you don't get multiplication as the inverse, then how do you know repeated addition is really what multiplication is? Well, you have to add. So you could trace back the complexity of those skills in math to early foundational grade levels. And so for us, seeing it starting strong in grade 3 and 4 is awesome. It means that we are laying really good foundations in those primary grades. And in order to maintain that, just like we have in reading, we have a math screener that has rolled out this year, or screeners, 2 screeners that have rolled out this year to ensure that we are providing early diagnostic assessments in math. And then a couple slides down the road, we'll talk about the increased type of supports that the team around me, behind me, is pouring into when it comes specifically to math instruction.
I thought that was very helpful. The elementary teacher explanation was very helpful.
Yes.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Anna, for sure. A new baseline, again, we want to not shy away from any challenge we have, right? This is the baseline based on our students' race and ethnicity. You'll see each category of where every student is at, which subgroup is at in their ELA, whether they're at or above proficiency, and their math proficiency. Again, no surprises that we have some categories that we need to continue to invest in, and Scott, you nailed it. That's what we're committed to doing in our state. Again, this is an opportunity for us to know where students are at and then give them the resources and supports that they need to be successful. Again, what an amazing story out of Columbus, Indiana about their special education, 100% pass rate in 3rd grade. And what I loved about that is you just saw a sincere love for one another and trust in one another as administrators and cadre and teachers. And again, I think that's what makes Indiana such a special place to raise children. You'll see here again, in our general education population has a proficiency of just over 48%, just in both math and ELA. And again, our special education population, 13 and 17%. Again, that's not going to be good enough for us. And again, we will be back here next year to talk about what measurements can we show that have improved with those populations. Again, great story out of Indianapolis from our parochial school, St. Anthony. Again, our new baseline for English learner status. Non-English learners, we have our proficiency set. And then our English learners, we have our proficiencies set for this 25, 26 data for iLearn. Again, this just lets us level set and make sure that we know where students are at so we can move them where they need to go. And then finally, as we've known as educators for a long time, the socioeconomic status of students does impact their ability sometimes. And again, the data is the data, and it shows that students who are on free and reduced meals are just under 30% at proficiency or above proficiency. So again, as we work with those schools in both rural and urban Indiana, we'll continue to provide them the supports they need to move the needle for those students as well. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Anna, and Anna's going to talk about the importance of parent supports and other things for teachers.
And as Anna walks up, just to, emphasize the only reason that we've had 5 consecutive years of movement in iRead is because of the army of people we've built statewide at the community level who are the change agents, who are making it happen, the educators, the parents and families working together. So we believe as this new baseline is set, we need the same level of army and focus on ELA and math. And so, Anna, really excited to hear some of what we're building out, thanks to a lot of feedback from educators and parents on what they need.
That's right. All right, let's dig into some resources and supports. Although we had the opportunity to talk about resources and supports last year as we were looking at last year's data, what we are going to talk through today is enhanced and or new, since we haven't had an opportunity to connect last year. This slide is looking at 3 bullets, massive bullets, big time bullets. The first one is content modules. I want you to think about these things as like a 2-hour self-paced, independent professional development course. They are in grade level bands. There are resources for educators, opportunities for educators to pause, apply, learn in the mix. These are completely free to educators and are housed on Indiana Learning Lab. A math support toolkit has recently been released that provides a step-by-step guide to help schools and really educators and teachers provide the right level of support, especially when we're talking about students in tier 2 or tier 3. When we're thinking about a tiered system of support, we know that not every student learns the first opportunity that standard has been presented to them. We know that not every student is able to demonstrate proficiency on a standard from the jump. So when students need additional time, emphasis, or support, teachers are grouping students in small groups, usually identified as tier 2 or tier 3 students, which doesn't have to be synonymous with our special education population. And those supports are heavily data-driven, heavily progress monitored, but sometimes leave a lot to chance. And so the work of our math team that is a part of our broader STEM team and our assessment team collectively have poured a lot of time, effort, and energy developing a robust math toolkit. And then we have standard spotlights. Plural spotlights is really appropriate because there are 432 of them. And when I checked in with Lynn and team this morning, she said, Anna, they're dropping this week. So how timely is that? A couple of them. They will roll out gradually, as her heart probably beats fast. They will roll out gradually over time. But the key here is that we are taking standards from simply being words on a paper and taking the guesswork out of what those standards mean, how they are taught, how they are assessed, and frankly, how they are supported at home. So these standard spotlights are as applicable to families as they are to educators in the classroom.
And as you go to the next slide, where that standard spotlight is going to connect is for the first time ever, when you look at the parent report, you know, we've had parents and families like, tell me what the score even means. I don't understand the number. I think I've asked that as a parent myself. The standards will now be listed on that parent report. And so when they see that the child is struggling, they could go to look specifically at how to help their child, teachers as well.
Can I ask a question on that one, please?
And there's more to come on that. I basically previewed slides like 4 from now, but yes, go ahead.
The standards, how are we going to ensure that those videos get into the hands of parents? And let me rephrase that question. Are we going to, like, I know schools and districts they can text, they can email mass. Are we going to encourage districts to say, okay, here's this video, get this in the hands of your parents as best you can?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Come on up, Lynn.
Thanks. So of those 432 videos, 216 are directly for parents, and they'll have multiple ways to access them through our website, through the Learning Lab, and then also connected to the family portal, which is Cambium Assessments Incorporated repository for all of the reports for their students. And so they'll get an access code to that and then connected to their individual student reports is a link that will take them to those videos.
So that link is something the EVSC could share out with all.
Correct.
20,000
And yeah, and it doesn't
students.
have to
Okay.
be when the results come out. It could be when that teacher sends home their weekly newsletter and they're going to be working on 3NS2 this week. They could say, hey, if you want to learn about the standard at home, and then along with that video, there's a one-pager that explains vocabulary terms, gives some examples, and then also some activities they can do at home.
Awesome. Thank you.
Really digestible. Thanks, Lynn.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
Is it in Spanish as well?
They are not at this time, no.
But it gives us something to work towards.
All right. The other piece that Lynn and her team have direct oversight of are our frameworks. We have two different types of frameworks. One that we think about is focusing primarily on our assessment, and the other one on instructional frameworks that certainly is in partnership with, there she is, with Shelley and her team. Our assessment frameworks are, as I mentioned before, a living, breathing document, as are the instructional ones, and are in the process of all being updated to align with new cut scores and proficiency levels that we have presented to you today. The assessment frameworks in particular bring all key assessment resources together in one place. So BJ, extrapolating for some of the things you shared, there's no hunting around anymore. We're going to create one opportunity in one spot for educators to go find everything they need in a single location, which is awesome. The instructional frameworks do the same thing. These are incredibly comprehensive. They provide guidance on instructional practices or on interventions, student learning opportunities across our key content areas. And then the piece that Lynn and her team have been working really hard on over the last year plus is ensuring that the through year data is applicable and relevant in real time across multiple platforms that a school may already be using. So collaboration with different partners, we could also say vendors, right, to ingest the through year data into their systems allows there to be a seamless actions based on instruction that's happening day to day and the through year checkpoints, which is really cool. All right, and then as Secretary Jenner teed us up for a little bit ago, this provides a synopsis of some really vibrant, pretty engaging, newly updated reports, both for educators and for parents. The smaller screenshots on the right-hand side show you some of that vibrancy, but these are new and improved reports based on feedback from thousands and thousands of educators and parents. For the first time, right, although the through year assessment this current year as well, but for the first times, our assessment system is able to provide parents with that real-time data 4 times a year, as opposed to just the summative assessment at the end. And then if we were to really unpack, so what is that data telling us and why is it important? This coming school year, you will see the standard level. So we're talking standard by standard level information on these reports, as well as summative assessment predictability, which means I take the beginning of the year checkpoint. It gives me a percentage of predictability on how I will perform later in the year. And that predictability measure continues to be updated based again on that real-time data from the through years, so that the summative does not feel like a surprise, right? Educators and parents have information on an ongoing basis to ensure that that instructional cycle is working in the same direction.
So just to emphasize, for the first time ever, and we have 1.13 million students in Indiana, every single parent and with students in grades 3 through 8 will have direct access to their child's data in ELA and math 4 times per year. And again, most of us are parents sitting here. That is a huge win for our parents and families. As we know, to maximize a child's success, all of us working together, that's how we get it done. So really pumped on that.
Yeah, for sure. And then I would also highlight the work of Lynn and her team. We can say that we have these reports, but if they sound too gibberish for a family, if it's too education speak, it's not really helpful. And so I wasn't being silly when I said these reports look vibrant, like colors, graphics, visuals are all really important, right? And these will highlight resources. They will highlight work at home activities. So families can very much feel like this is a tool. And bluntly, BJ, to your question earlier, I would hope that if a parent receives this during their checkpoint 1 and they don't get it in the winter, that the parent would say to the teacher, where is my, right? Or I don't know how to access the Cambium system anymore. How do I do that again? So it's not paper or sending it home in a backpack dependent. Families have the opportunity to access.
Katie?
Yeah, Dr. Ernest and then BJ.
So two things that I love, and you've heard me talk about this before. Now it's exciting that it's in. One, I love the predictability factor, right? Because you've heard me talk about what we had back in the day for high school. You always get mad when I name company names, but that test, that one that we used as a through line was highly predictable, right? And it helped you. So I love that we have that. I also love the parent piece, and I just want to really encourage our schools, help your parents make use of what we now have for parents, right? I'm a huge parent advocate and wanting to work with parents. And I always told teachers when I worked with them that, gosh, we give parents a bad rap, but no parent wants to not be a good parent with their kid. But we, and I'm saying we because, Katie, I loved what you said about I was not a good parent at times of helping I'm glad my wife was the primary parent of helping my son through school, right? But we need to help them to know where these resources are. And so now that we have them, we want to make sure to use them. But gosh, kudos to doing this, right? This is exciting stuff here that we've got now for them.
And I think we'll be able to see click rate. We will follow some of that very, very closely to see, are the resources being utilized? And again, that's the army we have to collectively build statewide to move the needle here. BJ.
I want to echo what Byron said, but
Can you lean up just a
I do love that fourth bullet where there's resources that are available to parents, and Byron said this perfectly. Is there a way that we can make sure that is aligned to those videos talked about earlier? Because Pat and I were talking earlier, and I think, I'm speaking for myself, Algebra 2 about killed me and my youngest son. So there's going to come a point in time where parents are going to max out on what they can do with their students. And I was that parent. I'm not throwing stones. But so is there a way to make sure that somehow this, and I know this is a huge ask, but can we at least dream towards, this is what your student doesn't get. Here's a couple examples of, here's some questions you can do. Here's a video that kind of teaches or reteaches that lesson with that, because I think that is where parents can go into to see, because again, we're going to get to a point where we can't help them, even if we want to. So how can we make sure that those videos that we have created with true experts are aligned to where those weaknesses are in this data?
Yeah, so there's several resources that tap into that. So the videos themselves walk through the different proficiency levels with examples. We have the released items repository, which we've had for a number of years, but we're redesigning that to give examples of items at each of those levels. The frameworks that have been mentioned, those have example items at each of the proficiency levels as well. So there's lots of opportunities to see. Also, the reports, I know you can't see it very well because it's really small. It's that lower right one. But the standard is broken down into specific concepts and skills. And so, then the intervention materials and those other resources then directly connect, as well as the other resources that teachers are using in the classroom. They can point to those as well.
Absolutely love this. This is one of the best things I've seen as far as us working with parents, and I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, awesome. Well, kudos to Lynn and her team. Certainly it's been a priority, and I probably glossed over the top bullet in a way that it didn't do it justice, but I heard Lynn say the other day that thousands of educators and parents is really over 12,000 educators and parents with about 5,500 certainly based on the feedback from across the state.
Will our teachers be able to see whether or not the parents have accessed it as well? We talked about following clicks. I mean, we talk about getting support from home. Will I be able to go in and say, well, we talked about this, but they haven't accessed it at home. So we could follow up and say, hey, here's that resource we told you about again. If you can access it at home, and here's some practice time for you to have.
Let's follow up with the company we're working with, because I think, Pat, that's an essential question. It'll only mean so much if we can see it at a state level with almost 1 million kids, right? But it means so much more at the classroom level. So let's see what we can do. I also have shared with Lynn and Anna and team, and you hit on it, BJ, like this is a massive step forward. But I think there is so much good that we can do to make sure our schools and parents and families are super connected on behalf of that child. And I think that's a great idea. And there's more ideas have been elevated as well that we need to explore on this.
Yeah, there's a list of good ideas that I know Lynn and her team are certainly working on. I don't want to be repetitive here. A lot of these we've already talked about, and we want to get to SAT, but this slide is looking at what additional supports are out there for scholars that the department and some of our key partners have poured themselves into. We mentioned the universal screeners earlier, both for reading and math. This helps us identify at-risk scholars early. iLearn checkpoints and summative assessments and their connection and through line to Lexile scores helps to bridge the gap between iRead and iLearn. We talked a little bit earlier too about the Indiana Learning Lab and just how robust it has become with instructional resources, both for teachers and for parents. Summer Learning Labs is something that Secretary Jenner highlighted at the beginning that continues to thrive and be strong. We would be remiss if we also didn't mention Indiana Learns, which is micro grants up to about $1,000 that are for tutoring in both reading and in math. And then the HQCM list that we talked about earlier for reading certainly exist in math and our STEM subjects across the board.
Can you go back to slide 33?
Potentially.
What if we tell you no? I'm
Well, I
teasing,
can just
Pat.
talk. I just maybe they can have a visual.
Of course we can.
I
Of
don't
course
see
we
numbers,
can.
Pat, so tell me when to stop.
Okay, keep going. I want the below, approaching,
Bottom right,
at, and
Anna.
above. That
Bottom
one's
right of
fine.
the screen. One
That's
more.
fine.
Oh,
Doesn't
yeah,
matter
yeah.
which one.
On yep, that's okay.
You know, I just want to reemphasize how hard our test is. And that, you know, used to, I'm old, I remember the days where we were 80%, 90% passing rates in the state of Indiana. And, you know, as schools are starting up, they're sitting down saying, what goals am I going to set? Well, we now have something new for them with a below proficiency, approaching, at, and above. And when we look at, you know, just look at the third grade, we know that 19.8% of them were below proficiency. Well, next year, can that number be 17% and maybe just get a 2% gain that we moved 2% of those kids to approaching? And then we move the approaching kids to proficiency, and we move the approaching or the proficiency kids to above proficiency. Those are the small gains you can get. I don't care if you're in Perry Township schools with 78% free and reduced, or you're at Hamilton Southeastern with a high socioeconomic. You can get 2 to 3% better every year.
Amen.
We're not going to get the 80%. We're not going to get the numbers we see in iRead 3, but we have to just take small bites of this every year. So when the student is through with their K-12 education, they're at proficiency in these areas.
Well said. Well said.
I'm glad we agreed to go back to slide 33. So good point to further emphasize. Anyone else? All right.
And here we are, the final home stretch, the last data point, but let's not forget that we're not talking about SAT without iLearn and iRead, that true vertical continuum of educators that make Indiana so great. Let's level set first. Let's talk about why SAT. Federal law requires the state, Indiana, to administer a high school assessment. And then more specifically, Indiana law requires this assessment to be a national college entrance exam. So that's why the SAT is the tool that we utilize. In Indiana, all students in grade 11 participate in the SAT, There's some intentionality there that every student in their junior year has the opportunity to score well in the SAT. Sometimes taking the SAT on a Saturday morning could be a barrier for some students. So I do appreciate that concept, that rationale of making all junior students take the SAT. The SAT is designed to measure whether a student is ready for academic demands of a four-year college. No surprises. Now, I don't want to talk about the next slide too early, but we know that not all high school students necessarily are on track for a four-year college, but the SAT is a valuable tool for those students. In fact, a score of 1250 fulfills one component on an enrollment honors seal, which is intentionally designed for students who plan, again, to attend a four-year college. What I love about our new high school diploma system is it allows students to personalize their education for the Monday after graduation. So again, while the SAT is not for all students, it is an important data point, and we do have that data to share with you right now. Let me dig into this a little bit, but I'm going to come to this conclusion. Our at or approaching proficiency of high school students is similar to our go rate to college of about 53%. You'll notice in yellow in the far left column, and again, the yellow column is evidence-based reading and writing, ELA for lack of a better term, and the blue is math. So if we look at the far left columns, we see about just under 39% are below college-ready benchmark in English, and about 52% of our junior cohort are below college-ready benchmark in math. We go to the next two middle columns, and we see about 9% in English are approaching, and about 52% are at college-ready. So when you combine those two, about 62% of our graduates are at or approaching college-ready benchmarks. Do the same for math. About 22% of that cohort are approaching college-ready benchmark, and 25.6 or just under 26%. So you have about 48% of our students in math. When you combine 60% ELA, that you get the true up of about 53% of our students attending college. So again, we are on track to be proficient at the SAT as a measurement for those students who are pursuing directly into four-year college. But let's talk about what many Hoosier students will be facing after graduation. We've talked to many employers. We've talked to the military. The SAT is not a score that they necessarily have interest in. What they are interested in is to make sure that our students have skills, attributes, and knowledge to be successful. And they've had the opportunity for advanced coursework for those going to four-year college. They've had an opportunity to develop skills, soft skills, communication skills, and they also have earned credentials earned during high school that carry value. And maybe most importantly, real-world experiences through their educational process as they earn those diplomas. Those same priorities directly reflected in the enrollment readiness seals, in addition to SAT, emphasizing tangible student outcomes versus a single test score. The header of this is preparing every student for future success. While the SAT is an important test, and we have the data to show that our students going to college are on track, it's not the only test. And with Indiana's recent federal waiver, third in the nation to be passed, and we'll say the most robust, wasn't number one, but it's the best one so far. The federal waiver, the new diploma, and readiness seals now serve as the primary measure of a school and student success in grade 12. So I know this board has had conversations ad nauseum about how do you really measure outcomes and indicate successes, and I do believe you nailed it on the diploma and the seals, and the federal waiver now recognizes that. Moves us away from, again, just one academic test. So with that, I'll hit pause, and then Dr. Jenner, I believe we have a slide for you to bring everything together. Is there anything I can answer for you, Dr. Jenner, or board members?
I think at this point, let's bring it home. This is the summary slide, takeaway at a glance. Paul, did you want to walk through this?
I'm happy to do that.
Great.
But I didn't want to steal your thunder because you've done an amazing job. So again, in recap, we've been here for 2.5 hours. We've seen some amazing student celebrations. BJ, you nailed on the head. Indiana should take a moment and we should celebrate our victories. And what you're looking at here right now is that 89% of third graders are proficient in reading past the iRead. That's amazing. Again, to BJ's point, we had our best year ever last year. And sometimes there's that decline. And I know Dr. Jenner lost some sleep over that potential decline. In fact, we did just the opposite. We had our second largest growth ever in iRead. So again, kudos to the state of Indiana and all the people supporting our students. You heard not only about iLearn results, you heard about the parent resources, and I concur with this board. Those parent resources are invaluable as we move forward together. And I'm going to give Lynn and her team a lot of credit for having parent input, taking parent feedback, educator feedback. This was a true collaborative spirit to build something out, to make sure parents have access. The new baseline on the new iLearn test, Indiana has a 42% pass rate, proficiency rate in ELA, and a 42.7 in math. Again, I can't stress this enough. Pat, you talked about it. iLearn is a rigorous measure of whether students are on track for a 4-year college. We owe every student in our schools right now, grades 3 through 8, to make sure they have a rigorous education so that they are prepared for college if they choose to do that. Other measurements are also important to understand students' full range of knowledge, skills, and abilities. Again, our accountability model is fantastic for a lot of reasons, but one is multiple measures, success factors. And then finally, as you just heard me talk about the SAT, while it is a great performance predictor on the ability for students to not only enter college, but also complete college on time, there's also a lot of studies saying that students who earn college credit while in high school, Indiana College Core, are more likely to finish their first year and, more importantly, finish college on time. So again, that's a financial savings to families. Again, collaboratively in a true K-12 continuum, the state of Indiana is doing an amazing job making sure students can read, making sure they're held to rigorous academic standards, and making sure they're prepared for life after high school.
Thank you for bringing it home for us, Paul. Really appreciate it. Board members, I know that it has been a lengthy meeting. We typically do iLearn in July and iRead in August. We combined it based on the state laws that changed the new cut scores. So thank you for staying highly engaged, robust discussion today. Any final comments from board members? Yes, Scott.
I just have 2 really quick ones. You just mentioned cut scores, and it was buried in the consent agenda. And I want to call out again, you mentioned at the beginning, the department could have recommended and we could have approved any cut score that we wanted that would have gotten our percentage anywhere we wanted to get it. And we stayed rigorous, right? And I think that, again, you see it across the country. You mentioned it, like there's that tendency to say we want to pat ourselves on the back, right? Again, we could have had a 70% pass rate, an 80% pass rate on iLearn, and we chose not to because we want to stay true and keep that honesty gap low. So I think, again, that got buried in the consent, but I think it's so important that we just continued what previous boards had done back in before 2020. And then the second one, and Paul, you mentioned a little bit, the alignment. If you look at the iLearn, and we had the category of approaching proficiency, in years past, those students in that approaching proficiency wouldn't have mattered or wouldn't have counted in the accountability system. And now they do. I go back to my comment of every student. So now schools can look at those approaching kids and say, that kid matters. And not only do they matter, they count on the accountability system. I get something for them. So now there's a huge incentive for me to move that below proficient kid to the approaching. And then just like, again, where we have the high school and the SAT, it is a little part of the high school accountability, but it's not the major part because, again, recognizing not every kid's going to go to college, there are lots of other things to do. So I think we've done a really good job in the last 5 years of really getting to alignment. So those 2 things really matter to me.
Thank you for those comments, Scott. Seeing no more comments, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
We are now adjourned. Thank you.